Good evening. This is Dr. Bill Wyatt again with the American Orthodontic Society, and I wanted to show you about five of these cases that had one lower anterior tooth removed, and they're a little different. This particular one was on a real hefty young man, and I thought it would be a very difficult job removing the tooth, but it turned out that it wasn't, and it worked out quite well, and show you the difference. We needed to have larger lower anterior teeth coming in, but what you do, you keep the interdigitation if you can all the way to the front, and then look at what they have. If they're out too far, you can bring them back by stripping the lower anterior or taking one of them out. Usually it's a central, and you can pull the others together. Now this was back when we had bands, and you had to remove these bands, and you had two pieces of metal and two layers of cement between every tooth. And you can just be very grateful that we have brackets now. So there's so many benefits for brackets over bands. I think I counted them up one time about 30 deals. Now here is this young man. Uh, he's got a nice facial structure. The balance and everything is fine. And looking from the profile view, it looks good. But when you look at the teeth, they're extremely crowded, and he's got a crossbite right in the front. And this was 1974, so it's a long time ago. We did all this in bands then. Now, over on this side, we look like we have a kind of a super class 1 relationship. You see the lower molar is out in front a little further than it should be, but the bicuspids don't look all that bad and everything, but he's real crowded in here, and he's got a terrible crossbite in that area, and the way we brought that in is kind of interesting. So anyway, let's look at it from the other side, and it's even worse as far as the molars are concerned. The bicuspids look pretty good in a class 1 relationship. So we got a lot of crowding in the lower anterior, and the upper is kind of a class 2 division 2 type situation and a real deep bite. So let's see what we do here and how it works out. Sorry. Alright, so you got this bad crossbite that we're going to have to deal with, and so we put a bite plate kind of made across here and open the bite like that. That's one way of doing it, and we got this open this gap up before we did all that, and then we got this tooth through into this space right there. That's a little different from what we would probably do today. Now the lower was crowded, and this tooth is kind of broken off right here. So we're going to take it out and bring this tooth up into this position right there. That's one of the centrals. Here's one central, here's the other, and here's a lateral. So we take the central out in that particular case. Now this is back when we banded everything, and we had to open the bite to get this lateral pulled over. Here we were doing it with an elastic thread, and it wasn't the most efficient way to pull it, but we had a coil spring was opening the gap in here to bring that lateral over, and it made it, but it may not have been the most efficient way to do that. So we'll go on to the next view here, and you can see that tooth has come across now, and it's tied. We used elastic thread back then to pull them over. We didn't have that little chain, rubber chain stuff, or plastic chain, and so we pulled it over with that. And I'll run through this right quick. Now, when you hook the lateral like this, a trick, we put a little acrylic down here and take an explorer and make a groove in that acrylic, and then you could tie that in there. and it doesn't matter what you pull it over. You might want to remember that you can just add some soft acrylic, put a groove in it, and then it'll hold the chain or anything else on there, and then pull it in with that, and you take that off after you get through with it. So that's another little trick to learn here on this. And now we got it off, and we've excuse me, we've banded the lower anterior, and you pull this, extracted this one tooth, brought this lateral up here, and here this central, we're going to try to get it in the center, but we didn't quite make it right there, and it works out quite good. So let's see what we got. Now here is the thing we opened the bite with. We just made a little acrylic half partial, and put it back in the back of the mouth, and that opened enough to drag this over the hump, and then we take this thing out, you see, and then that will have this tooth out in this area here where we can work with it. And these are all bands, and somebody wanted me to show some banded cases. This is definitely one. So anyway, here we got it across the hump, and we put a band on this lateral right here, and it looks kind of lopsided there. I don't know what we'll do. We change that out or something. And here we are opening that space, and we're bringing it across, and the lateral is in place now, but you need to put some what we call buccal labial root torque. We got to bring this root out. As we drug that from the side, it made this have too much torque, so we put reverse torque and bring this down right up here, bring this in, and I think we got some of that done. I don't see any of this arch wire right here, but we could put a little of that in there, and it would pull the roots to the distal more. So anyway, here we go, and we've just about finished it out. Now we still, if you look here and you look there, it's a little more, but pretty well torqued into place and everything. Now we're going to have to take all these bands off and close all these spaces up with elastic from molar to molar in there, and just hope to God it looks good when the space is closed. So you had to put a little more torque than you wanted, and then you close this space, and it would close up, and you'd hope that it would be like you really wanted it, but you couldn't bring the parents there and say, look at this, is this like you like it? And we're going to take it off, and it'll be like this when we get through. That's the way it is with brackets. You can have them just exactly like you want them. You can take all these brackets off, except we band the molars. That doesn't mess with this part. And if the parents want them like that, you take it off and immediately take the impression to build the appliance and to trim the bracket off the model, see. So you have it ready made. It's so much better. Okay, here we go. The lower looks pretty good now. Down here you see where they're lined up, and we had that chipped off tooth, took it out. And here we finished him, and I wanted to close these spaces, so I put a little acrylic on here, and on top of the arch wire, and I put a little Vaseline on the arch wires, and then I tighten them up real good, and that wire slips inside that acrylic. And this is a trick I haven't shown hardly any, but we could take an arch wire and put it on the people's mouth and get it like we wanted, and put a little Vaseline on it, and then we put acrylic over that, and we made a slot, The arch wire was right in here, and it was greased so that we could slide back and forth. Now we tighten that up and close this space up here. Now you don't have to worry about that with brackets. You can close them up like it is, but we had to figure out ways to do things like that and get this closed up good before we took all this off. So that's a little trick you might use various times. You can you have the arch wire there, and you can put a little Vaseline on it and then put acrylic over the whole thing. Or you can have a wad of acrylic on the tooth that's soft and put some Vaseline on the arch wire and push it in there and cover it up. It'll still slide back and forth on the arch on this self-made bracket or tube that we've got there for it. So that's something you can learn how to do. And as far as that goes, you can put this type of thing on a impacted tooth back there and stick your spring into it and let it harden everything, and then take your spring and activate it out here, cut it, and it would raise that up. You wouldn't even need a tube to do the ectopic erupting teeth or the tilted teeth. Okay, just a neat little thing you pick up with this. Alright, we close that up, and back then we bonded everything. We soldered hooks on here and used electric, for calister elastics and all that. Now there is the thing trimmed up. This tooth still looks like it's got more torque in it than this one over here, so we didn't twist this wire quite enough to bring that root out, but you could take that root and stick it out if you wanted to. Alright, it looks pretty good, and probably his tongue will come in and press on this, and over a period of time will torque those teeth. That's how anybody's teeth got torqued anyway, is when they come in and the cheeks and the lips and the tongue press against that. If they're functioning correctly, they move the teeth correctly. If they're not, the teeth will be moved in a bad direction. So that's just how anybody's teeth are like that. So here we've done that. The tongue may tip that back in a little bit. Now we'll take the rest of these bands off, and now we leave the molar bands on, and we wear elastics from molar to molar. We put a little dab of acrylic on these two teeth, make a groove in it, and you can put your rubber band exactly where you want it, and you send them home and tell them to chew some bubble gum, and their teeth are going to get kind of sore, but they close all that space in just a matter of 2 or 3 days. Now this down here, we didn't get this together like we should have. We got this ought to have been closer together here, so we're going to have a little space left down on the lower anterior teeth. I don't know how much it was, but anyway, we close everything up, and it looks pretty good. We're going to have that large space on the lower, though. And we've still got a space right in here on this lower tooth. Now we could come in and put some composite and build it and close it together if you wanted to do that. Let me see. Now that's the lateral, I think, that we jumped out of the crossbite, and here's where we had the elastic in that, coming around, closing that space. And this is the way it was a good many years ago. 1971 or 4, I think, was when it was. And we take the molar bands off, and then we'll build a retainer for it. And that pointed out 2 or 3 little things there. The closing space on where you may want to do that, where you put the arch wire in there, and then you put some Vaseline over the arch wire and then put acrylic over it, or you make an acrylic pad, put a groove in it, put the arch wire in there with Vaseline on it, and you can actually put a thin coat of wax, if you want to, over the arch wire and put it in there, and you've got a tube, a homemade tube built there that you can slide the arch wire back and forth in. Works good. Now, we didn't finish that quite good enough there, but it closed, I think, after a period of time. All right, that's the end of it, and I hope you get some things out of this. You get something out of nearly every case that's different. They're nearly all are. There's some difference in them, and so you just figure out the ways that you do stuff like this. So I hope you got something out of this that you can use, and I'm going to say goodbye and join our group and subscribe to this. So we thank you for watching. Good night.